Who else was feeling? I felt a lot of fear from the group when we were just arrived tonight, actually. So who else was feeling quite a lot of fear? Yeah, quite a few. So yeah, the material we've put on the net about fear is really worth going over and over, because it's sort of like it's very hard when we're in the fear itself to actually believe that fear is not more than an emotion. You know, like we believe it has to be real. And it's like, how dare anybody tell me this is just an emotion? You know, like that's how we feel inside of ourselves. And we often feel quite angry that somebody even would suggest it's even just an emotion, because it actually feels to us to be quite real. It feels to be something definite. And yet the irony is, when we go through into the fear itself, we start recognising, yeah, it's a bad emotion. It's probably one of the worst human emotions we can experience, but it's still an emotion. It's not a reality. It's just an emotion. It's an emotion we need to feel and release, but it's just another emotion. Yeah. There are other emotions that are almost as bad, like shame is another one is almost as bad. You know, but the reality is, if you can learn to embrace your fear and submit to it, you will find that any other emotion comes up, you'll be fine with it. Because basically, once you've learnt to experience your own terrors, there's no other emotion that can actually cause you any that is worse to feel. So yeah.
Once you let yourself experience that, then it's sort of liberating. Sorry, go.
Huh?
For me, fear feels like this place of holding myself in suspension. Like I'm not actually in anything. I'm trying to prevent things all the time. I'm prevent, and I'm like suspended in space. And actually, even if the thing I fear happens, to then be in that event and feel the emotions that it triggers is far easier than holding myself in this suspension all the time. It's like not a real state. That's why so many people say fear is not real. And the truth is, the things we fear might happen, but the state isn't a real state. We're actually afraid of the event happening, and if we can just process everything we feel about the event, the fear will disappear. That's why so many times when you confront the thing you're afraid of, you're no longer afraid of it, because you've dealt with the emotions that are there. But very often, for most of us, we need to process the fear, because the thing that we fear the most, like being raped and attacked, we don't need to have that experience in order to process the fear. Do you know what I mean? So we can just go into the fear, process it, and we never have to actually experience that event. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Can I just mention a few more things about the fear? Most people stay in this state of fear. They say, I'm feeling fear, but actually they're not feeling fear. They're avoiding the feeling of fear. And because of the choice to avoid the feeling of fear, they are now going into this place where they're doing everything they possibly can to avoid the fear, but they don't realise actually it is tiring as you know in your own life, right? It is one of the most tiring things and exhausting things to do, to constantly nurse your fear. It's like you're walking down the street, you go, do I worry about that man? Do I worry about this man? Do I walk past, the hotel's coming up on the side there. You know, there's people standing out there, they're probably drunk. I need to go across the other side of the road. And you know, there's this constant thing going on over and over and over in your own mind that is actually manipulating your entire life. Now you imagine if you could just walk down the road and be totally oblivious to everything around you, but connected. When I say oblivious, I mean in the sense of not responding to and knowing that you're going to be fine and will be able to cope with anything. You walk in that space. You walk down the road, and you're thinking, it'd be nice to have a nice meal tonight, and you're thinking about all these other things that have nothing to do with being terrified. The problem with living in the fear is it creates this state of hyper alertness and hypervigilance. And we then live almost in this constant state of hypervigilance. Our adrenaline glands are just going firing constantly, and we're in this hypervigilant state constantly. And that is actually more exhausting than actually feeling the fear itself and releasing it. And this is the funny thing we do with a lot of our emotions. It's actually more exhausting to try to control them than it is just to feel them and release them. And that's the sad thing about a lot of our life. We have a tendency, like with fear, well, let's call it what it really is, because it's stronger than fear, isn't it? It's really terror. And what we're doing with it is we're being so hyper-vigilant, trying to actually nurse it. So what we're doing is we're nursing this as if it's like a little baby, you know, nursing our fear and protecting it from everything. And the activity of doing that takes so much energy and force of will that every day we end up at the end of the day just totally exhausted. If we submitted to the emotion itself and just let it flow, the irony is all of a sudden not only will all of our bodies start to relax, we'll be able to start to breathe and get some breath into us for the first time in our lives, but also our actual day-to-day experience is no longer dictated by the fear that we're nursing or the terror that we're nursing. And that's the beauty of our life then. Instead of nursing it, like Mary said, living in this terror, we are now living a real experience which is devoid of the fear and the terror. And it's actually more relaxing to feel the terror itself than it is to live in it. That's the irony of that emotion. And in fact, the irony of most emotions. It's more relaxing to actually feel them than it is to try to maintain an intellectual state or a pseudo state where we're trying to control them. Yeah.